Welcome to this e-learning course on quantitative research methods in social sciences. My name is Dr. Haihu Guo, and I'm a lecturer at the Department of Society and Health, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, Mahidol University. This course is designed to provide you a solid foundation in quantitative research, especially how it is applied in social science fields such as sociology, public health, education, and psychology. In this first topic, we will start with a broad overview to set the stage for what comes in later sections. In this topic, we will cover several key aspects. First, we will study what quantitative research is and how it functions within the social sciences. Next, we will look at its characteristics, such as its reliance on numerical data and objectivity. We will also highlight why it is important and what purposes it has, from measuring behaviors to informing public policy. Then, we will examine some real-world examples of quantitative studies in different disciplines. Finally, we will provide a brief introduction to qualitative research and compare the two approaches to highlight their distinct contributions. Quantitative research in social sciences is a systematic investigation that focuses on collecting and analyzing numerical data. This approach is especially useful when we want to measure variables, establish relationships between them, and test existing theories. It emphasizes objectivity, meaning researchers strive to minimize bias, and often begins with a hypothesis drawn from a theoretical framework. It uses structured tools like surveys, tests, and databases, where the question or data points are fixed and consistent. This method allows us to analyze social patterns, make predictions, and explain complex phenomena in a simplified and generalizable form. Let's take a moment to explore the philosophical foundations of quantitative research. First, we look at epistemology, which is about how we gain knowledge. Quantitative research is based on positivism, which believes that knowledge comes from measurable, observable facts. Later, post-positivism emerged, accepting that all observation has come error, but still aiming for objectivity and rigor. Next is ontology, or how we view reality. Quantitative research assumes that there is a single, objective reality that we can measure and understand through data. The main goal is to discover general laws or patterns using structured methods and statistical tools. This is done through a deductive approach, starting from theory, forming hypotheses, and then collecting data to test them. In summary, quantitative research is built on the belief that reality is measurable and that we can use data to explain and predict social phenomena. Quantitative research has multiple important roles in social science. First, it allows us to measure human behaviors, opinions, or social structures in a way that is standardized and repeatable. Second, it helps us generalize findings from a sample to a larger population, assuming the sample is representative. Third, it enables researchers to test theories or hypotheses, either confirming or rejecting assumptions based on statistical evidence. And fourth, the findings can directly inform policy decisions or practical application, such as improving education programs, designing health interventions, or addressing social inequity. Let's now look at the main steps in a quantitative research process. This gives us a clear picture of how a typical study is carried out. We start by identifying a research problem, something important or interesting that needs investigation. Next, we review the existing literature to understand what is already known and to help get our research direction. Then, we formulate hypotheses, specific, testable statements that predict relationships between variables. After that, we choose an appropriate research design, such as experimental, correlational, or descriptive, depending on the research question. The next step is to collect data using structured tools like surveys or tests. Then we analyze the data using statistical techniques to see if the evidence supports our hypothesis. After analysis, we interpret the results, linking them back to the theory or problem we started with. Finally, we report our findings, often in the form of research papers, reports, or presentations. Each step builds on the one before it, and together we ensure that the study is systematic, objective, and replicable. Let's now look at the 5 core characteristics of quantitative research. Objective and systematic. The process is designed to minimize personal bias and ensure consistency. Numerical data collection. Data is collected in the form of numbers, which allows for statistical analysis. Use of statistical analysis. Researchers apply statistical techniques to interpret the data, look for patterns, or test significance. Replicability. The methods are described in detail so that other researchers can repeat the study and verify results. Deductive reasoning. This means we begin with a theory, develop a hypothesis, and then test them with data. These characteristics make quantitative research a rigorous and reliable approach. Let's now look at the 3 major types of quantitative research designs: survey, correlation, and experimental designs. First, we have survey research. This is one of the most common methods in the social sciences. It uses structured questionnaires or interviews to collect data from a large group of people. Surveys are useful for describing attitudes, behaviors, or opinions. For example, we might survey students about their study habits or stress levels. Next is correlation research. This design looks at the relationship between variables without trying to change anything. For instance, we might examine the correlation between hours of screen time and sleep quality. It's important to remember, correlation does not imply causation. Last, we have experimental research. This is the only design that can test cause and effect. Researchers manipulate one variable, the independent variable, and observe its effect on another, the dependent variable. Participants are randomly assigned to groups, like treatment and control groups. An example would be testing whether a mindfulness program reduces student anxiety. Each of these designs has its strengths and is chosen based on your research question. Let's see how quantitative research is used in social sciences. In sociology, surveys measure how often people face unfair treatment. In public health, we collect data on exercise habits and body weight. In education, test scores before and after a new teaching method are compared. In psychology, questionnaires like PHQ-9 or G87 help evaluate students' mental health. These methods are numbers to study real issues and support decision-making. To compare with quantitative methods, qualitative research focuses on understanding meaning, experience, and context rather than measuring variables. It uses non-numerical data, such as words, interviews, images, or observations, to capture rich descriptive information. The goal is to explore why or how something happens, rather than how much or how often. Qualitative research is particularly useful when studying topics that are complex, subjective, or deeply embedded in social and cultural contexts. While it may not aim to generalize, it provides valuable insights that quantitative research might overlook. Key characteristics of qualitative research include it uses text-based data, such as transcripts, field notes, or open-ended responses. The research design is often flexible, allowing changes in questions or focus as the study progresses. Instead of statistics, researchers identify themes and patterns that emerge from the data. The context, such as cultural, historical, or interpersonal background, is seen as central to understanding meaning. This method values depth over breadth, making it well suited for studies of lived experience and social meanings. Here are some qualitative applications. In anthropology, ethnographic methods are used to observe and document the daily lives of a community. In health research, in-depth interviews with patients help reveal how they perceive illness and treatment. In education, teachers can be asked to reflect on their experience with curriculum reform or classroom dynamics. In sociology, researchers might explore how migrant communities narrative their identity and experiences of belonging. These examples show how qualitative research uncovers insights that numbers alone cannot provide. Let's take a quick look at some key strengths and limitations of quantitative research. One major strength is that it often produces generalizable results, especially when using large, representative samples. It's also objective and replicable, meaning other researchers can follow the same steps and expect similar outcomes. In addition, data collection, especially with surveys, can be quite efficient and scalable. On the other hand, quantitative methods may miss important context. For example, numbers cannot always explain the why behind behaviors. They may also oversimplify complex social issues, reducing them to variables and scores. And finally, quantitative study require careful design. Per instruments or biased sampling can lead to misleading results. Understanding these strengths and limitations help us choose the right methods for the right question. Let's now summarize the key differences between these two approaches. Main focus. Quantitative research aims to measure and test, while qualitative research seeks to explore and understand. Data type. Quantitative uses numbers. Qualitative uses words and narratives. Approach. Quantitative is structured and standardized. Qualitative is flexible and adaptive. Reasoning. Quantitative follows deductive logic. Qualitative is often inductive. Purpose. Quantitative research seeks to generalizability and precision, whereas qualitative research provides depth and context. Both methods are valuable. Many researchers use mixed methods to get the benefits of these two approaches. This concludes our introduction to quantitative research methods. in social sciences. We have covered what quantitative research is, its key characteristics, why it matters, and how it differs from qualitative approaches. In the following sessions, we will explore specific topics such as sampling, research design, measurement, and data collection. Thank you, and please continue to the next lesson.